And she was the daughter of Franz Boas, and I followed her through the gym, up the stairs, classic red curtains, and she taught kinesiology and improvisation. And at that time, I was living between, I went to biology, botany, and then geology. I was living between the Freedom Houses in Atlanta and there in the Ku Klux Klan. They used to come out and burn crosses in our front yard. So I started going on those buses. And then she looked at me one day and she said, "You could be a great dancer." And I thought about my options. I'm going to die on a bus. I'm going to New York City and become a dancer. And, and I worked with, I was Alan Nicolai's first paid understudy. I would stand in front of the mirror and watch my muscles work hour after hour after hour and just train my body. I was in the studio 17 hours a day, and I didn't start dancing until I was 21. I was in Nicolai's company before I ever saw his work. And then one day, I realized that he talked about, and he had an incredible gestalt, and which we had to run the studios, and okay, that's another story. But I looked at his work one day, and this reaching into the unknown, which I had totally bought into, and which I still have bought into, I realized that all the movements were the same. And I went, I'm out of here. No, like I needed to know what was inside the body that wanted to speak, and what were the systems and organs. What did the blood say? What did the brain say? What's the difference between the bony structure and what is contact as opposed to contact? And so actually contact has been my metaphor, for kind of my work. I always thought other people are much more political, than I am. I'm just desperate.
For me, I'm still tackling the title of an artist, because I've been doing this for 19 years now. I'm 6, and I didn't come from the art background, and especially with family, immigrant family. You spoke especially Asian Americans, medicine or engineering, law, what have you. So therefore, it's to even take on a title is a big stigma for me. For me, coming from a culture of Korean people who were discussing about that, for me, we didn't have a word for art, but yet it's not separate from daily life. Therefore, I'm embracing my daily life much more than the theater, because that in itself is such a theater. Even this is the theater as we speak. So therefore, when we go to theater, for me it's more like a church, allowing ourselves to just put things outside, just isolate the situation and allow ourselves to be free from it, but yet be aware constantly. So for me, art also is a very political statement for me, coming from a culture where you're observing class system. And as an artist, I feel like I can maneuver through different culture. As an immigrant coming from another culture, you climb the ladder, the social ladder, such as engineering, and earn and live in a certain neighborhood, zip code, what have you. And you continue that life, and so you live under the guilt that we move here for you, son. So therefore, that's always going to be there. But for me, it allows me to just observe the culture much more, and I appreciate life much more. For me right now, I'm just appreciative of this moment, just to be able to share. And it allows me to just reflect on artists as a venue.
Great question. Who has another one?
I'm curious, as artists, do you believe that you have a responsibility beyond making art? And if you do, how do you does that ever come into conflict with making honest art that interests you, and how do you reconcile that, especially in our current country and world and political and environmental climate? Does that make sense? Okay.
Who wants to take a stab at that?
Greenpeace. Very simply, I started donating, and then I started reading, and then every year I would give myself a hard time and say, well, Sarah, why don't you actually go out and join Greenpeace, or do this, or this organization? And I haven't been successful. I've been a city rat, and I give my money where I can. And I would love to see the tables out there, and I've thought about this and how to make this connection. I tried to, and I don't know, when was it? When I started thinking about it, I wanted to make the environmental cycles years ago, I tried to start to work with environmentalists, and I failed. I didn't. But I would love to see connections in the house in relationship with art and extending out in the community. I haven't been able to do that. I want that. I call it in. I mean, I guess that's the best that I can say. I mean, I have a split between being a monk, or I have in the past, and being an artist. But there are people who are doing their job that are actually holding a part of reality together by sitting in a cave. I think, and I don't know, but it's what I know how to do, that I'm more effective doing what I do. And I would like to do more.
You are psychic. Am I your parent? Well, I think it's a really interesting question. It's a complicated question for me. I first of all don't think that the work that I do on the stage is the limit of the work that I do. Like, I think that my work extends beyond that, to the teaching, to the interactions I have with people and artists, to the mentorship roles I play, to the student role that I play, to mentors that I have, to the advocacy that I do between scenes, or, you know, between like artists and funders, or blah blah blah, you know, all the different sort of sectors of the field that I encounter. You know, lately I feel like I do a lot of advocacy in Europe for America, an American artist, to be like, no, everything is not boring and terrible in America. You know, you have to convince those people. It's real hard, let me tell you. And then, you know, so I feel like my work is all that. Like, I don't feel like curating. I did a lot of curating. And you know, the pieces are like just one part of this web. At the same time, I felt myself flinch a little bit when you asked the question, like, do I have to do something? I'm like, oh God, it's that thing of like, I have to do more. I'm not doing enough. Like, the work isn't enough. You know? And I talked to an ex of mine today on the phone, and who I'm very good friends with still. And I noticed in him, like, I don't know, I just noticed he's so tortured in this thing of like that. To be an artist is somehow not generous, or like to be like, he was like, oh no, I'm helping my brother build a house, and it's like, you know, real life thing. It's like a real life thing. It's not an art thing. It's a real life thing. And I felt myself hear that, and I was like, I got what he's saying, but I was like, why is art making ungenerous to you? Like, I found that I'm not assuming that's your assumption. I'm just I'm saying that, like, I have to remember to look at the fact that what I do is empowering me, which is really important, because I otherwise would just be depressive, like, you know, living in, I mean, really, I mean, if it wasn't for the work that I was doing, I would be having a very different life. It's empowering for me to engage with the people that I work with, and then it's empowering for me to share that, and that is a lot, actually. Like, I'm doing a lot there, and trying to, at the same time, keep myself together and be a good person in the world. You know, it gets back to this poverty mentality for me thing about or the thing that started to happen. I noticed, you know, in the 90s with, you know, the NEA justifications of like, you have to now be an artist and you have to be like, you know, like you fix all the problems that the government doesn't want to pay for. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I think it's, you know, my answer even goes beyond that, and it's more complicated than that, I think. But I remember sometimes being in those kind of situations when I was dancing for other companies and seeing moments that I thought was really empowering, and seeing moments when I thought, we aren't the people that should be doing this. Like, we aren't the best suited people for this, or, you know, it was, you know, I felt I had different feelings about it.
Do you want to hear from the rest of us? I feel like I'm going to answer that question